When a child is born, it is supposed to be one of the happiest and most memorable days of a family's life. But for some parents, that joy is overshadowed by the devastating reality of a birth injury. Birth injuries can change the course of a child's future and place an enormous emotional and financial burden on the family. When those injuries are the result of medical negligence, the law provides a way for families to seek justice. This is where birth injury malpractice cases come into play. In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at how birth injury malpractice cases work, what families need to know, and how the legal process unfolds. Let's start by understanding the difference between a birth injury and a birth defect. A birth injury is harm that occurs before, during, or shortly after delivery, often due to complications in the labor and delivery process. For example, a baby might suffer oxygen deprivation if the medical team fails to respond to fetal distress in time. A birth defect, on the other hand, is usually the result of genetics or developmental issues that occur during pregnancy. Malpractice cases apply only when the harm was preventable and caused by substandard medical care. This distinction is very important because not all adverse outcomes in childbirth are caused by negligence. In order for a birth injury malpractice case to succeed, several key elements must be proven. First, there must be a duty of care. This means that the healthcare provider, whether it was a doctor, nurse, or hospital, had a responsibility to treat the patient according to established medical standards. Second, there must be a breach of duty. This occurs when the provider fails to act the way a competent professional would under similar circumstances. For example, if the medical team ignored clear signs of distress or used excessive force during delivery, that could be considered a breach. Third, there must be causation. This is one of the most challenging parts of a malpractice case, because the family must show that the injury was directly caused by the provider's negligence, not by natural complications or unrelated factors. Finally, there must be damages. The baby and family must have suffered real harm, such as medical bills, ongoing therapy costs, disability, or emotional distress. Now let's talk about some of the common types of birth injuries that often lead to malpractice claims. One of the most serious is cerebral palsy, which can result from oxygen deprivation during delivery. Another common injury is brachial plexus damage, also known as Erb's palsy, which occurs when a baby's shoulders are mishandled during birth, often in cases of shoulder dystocia. Improper use of forceps or vacuum devices can cause skull fractures, brain bleeding, or nerve damage. Hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, also known as HI, can occur when the baby's brain doesn't receive enough oxygen and blood. And sometimes, babies may suffer broken bones or nerve injuries that should have been avoidable. These conditions can leave children with lifelong disabilities, requiring extensive medical care and support. So how does the legal process for a birth injury malpractice case actually work? It usually begins when parents realize that something is wrong with their child's health or development. The first step is to consult with a malpractice attorney who specializes in birth injury cases. These lawyers typically work on a contingency basis, meaning they only get paid if they win the case. The attorney will begin by obtaining all of the mother's prenatal records, delivery records, and neonatal care documents. These medical records are then carefully reviewed by legal and medical experts to look for signs of negligence. If experts believe that malpractice occurred, the attorney will move forward with building the case. A lawsuit is formally filed against the responsible parties, which could include doctors, nurses, or the hospital itself. Once the lawsuit is filed, the case enters what's called the discovery phase. This is when both sides exchange evidence, take depositions, and gather witness testimony. Expert witnesses play a critical role in these cases. Medical specialists testify about what the standard of care should have been and explain how the provider's actions failed to meet that standard. They also help establish the connection between the negligence and the child's injuries. At this point, many cases move towards settlement discussions. Hospitals and insurance companies may prefer to settle rather than risk a trial, especially if the evidence of negligence is strong. A settlement allows the family to receive compensation sooner and avoid the emotional strain of a lengthy trial. However, if no agreement can be reached, the case proceeds to trial. In a trial, a judge or jury will hear both sides and decide whether malpractice occurred and how much compensation should be awarded. So what kind of compensation can families expect in these cases? Damages can be divided into several categories. Economic damages cover measurable costs like medical expenses, rehabilitation, assistive equipment, and special education services. Non-economic damages account for things like pain and suffering, emotional distress, and loss of quality of life. In some cases, families may also receive compensation for future damages, which include the anticipated lifelong care costs for the child and the loss of future earning potential. Since many birth injuries can require decades of ongoing support, the financial impact can be enormous. It's also important to mention the statute of limitations. Every state has strict deadlines for filing medical malpractice lawsuits. These deadlines vary, and in some cases, the clock doesn't start running until the injury is discovered. However, if the deadline is missed, families can lose their right to pursue compensation. This makes it critical for parents to seek legal advice as soon as they suspect something is wrong. Of course, birth injury malpractice cases come with significant challenges. The medical evidence is often complex and requires testimony from highly specialized experts. Hospitals and insurance companies tend to fight these cases aggressively, since the financial stakes are so high. The litigation process itself can take years and is emotionally draining for families. But despite these challenges, many parents pursue these cases not only to secure the care their child needs, but also to hold healthcare providers accountable and prevent similar mistakes in the future. At the heart of every birth injury malpractice case is a family that has been forever changed by the outcome of a delivery. For them, this is not just a legal battle. It is about getting justice for their child and ensuring that they have the resources to give their child the best possible quality of life. Understanding how these cases work can empower families to make informed decisions, seek the right legal help, and advocate for their child's future. So, to recap, birth injury malpractice cases begin with identifying whether an injury was preventable and caused by negligence. They require proving duty, breach, causation, and damages. The process involves medical record reviews, expert testimony, filing a lawsuit, discovery, and often settlement negotiations. Damages may include both current and future costs, and strict legal deadlines apply. While these cases are challenging, they can make a tremendous difference for families who are coping with the lifelong impact of a preventable birth injury. That's how birth injury malpractice cases work. If you or someone you know has gone through this experience, remember that legal and medical professionals can help guide you through the process and fight for the justice your family deserves.